Now, you've also collected footage of turtles being killed off cans. What's so important about those pictures?
The ones off cans are taken under the so-called Native Title Act, and those turtles are taken in such numbers, and particularly at this place we're at now, there were 6 taken out here in a boat last week. Now they're out here whenever the weather's calm, and we may be witnessing here today, and they take numbers that truly could not be used for truly ceremonial purposes. There's not many local weddings. They'd have to having a wedding every half an hour or a funeral every half an hour for the numbers they're taking. We have also many stories related to me through people who have been offered dugong and turtle meat for sale. They've seen it packed in eskies. They've seen it sold at NAIDOC celebrations in Brisbane. They've also had it offered to them in hotels, and it sells for $25 a kilo for turtle meat and up to $50 a kilo for dugong meat. It's all professionally cut and packed. I was in an abattoir for 7 years. I know what packed and professionally cut meat looks like.
Okay, so that takes me to my next question. You are a former abattoir worker. You're no stranger to cutting up carcasses. Is this more cruel than what goes on in an abattoir?
I worked in abattoirs for 7 years in Victoria, in a company been running for 100 years. One of my roles was in the killing room. I actually shot the cattle. I worked on all stations through an abattoirs. In the whole 7 years I saw 2 instances of cruelty in 7 years, and I was there every day for 7 years. What I see here sends shockwaves through me and shockwaves through Australians. I don't like seeing any animal suffer, and I particularly don't like seeing an animal being cut up alive. And I think the vision that we saw recently with the live cattle brought that point home to everybody, that the cruelty exists still today. And if you work in an abattoirs, you dispatch an animal humanely. I'm no bleeding heart conservationist. I didn't jump out of the Wilderness Society or any of those groups. I've never had a background in conservation. I took this on because it's wrong. It was reported to me they killed 14 in one pod one day. I really didn't know a lot about the dugong, so I went home and researched it. When I saw the vulnerability of it, I started this campaign. And I just can't believe that in 2012 we cut up animals alive.
Now, can Indigenous hunting be done sustainably of turtle and dugong?
Well, it could be if we knew how many were there. Australia is supposed to have the largest population in the whole world. We're supposed to have a dugong population of 50 to 80,000, and the largest concentration is in the Torres Straits. We've never had a proper survey of all the turtles and dugongs, which range from Shark Bay right in West Australia right round to about, I think I've caught a dugong in the net at Coogee. So we're talking half of Australia, right to the Northern Territory, the Gulf of Carpentaria, the Kimberleys. Now these animals have been taken in all those areas, and no one knows how many's out there. So like I said to you before, how are we going to know when they're gone, except when they're gone? And I think that we need to have a moratorium for a period, whether it be 12 months or 2 years, with full Indigenous involvement, so there's transparency, one Indigenous person, one non-Indigenous, so that we believe each other, because they won't believe us and we won't believe them. So the only fair way to do it is have a moratorium, determine the status of these animals, whether there's enough left, and then we would have to have a permit system to make sure that we hunted them sustainably. But no one can talk about sustainability when you don't know how many animals are there. And a lot of people say there's rogue hunters and rogue poachers, but we've got to worry about the person who does it under legitimate native title rights, able to go out there. We have to have some control on the numbers that they're taking of these endangered and vulnerable animals, and that's the whole thing that excited me. With my background in abattoirs, my background in unions, I always believe there has to be a process for everything. And when I read the Act, the 1993 Section 211, you want to have a look at it on the internet and Google it, you'll see it's devoid of process. The other part is that really worries me is the 2001 Animal Care and Protection Act in Queensland. It's the only act in the whole of Australia that excludes Indigenous hunting. Now, why do we exclude any part of our population in Queensland from being cruel to an animal? If I kicked someone's koala, I would be in jail. If I shot somebody's dog, I would be in jail. Why does someone be allowed to, under Australian law, Queensland law, come to a place where tourists flock to, or any place for that matter in the state of Queensland, and kill an animal with impunity? It's ridiculous.
Now, you've covered this before, but if you could tell me concisely, how important is stopping the hunt?
It's critically important to stop it. I think we have to critically look at the situation on where we are with their populations, because all of the information being fed to me from people in the areas that see it on a daily basis, who have input into the hunting, the training of the people who do the hunting, the training of the Indigenous rangers, tell me we're at critical levels. I have to believe those people. I can't believe a politician sitting in Canberra or somebody who's been appointed by the government telling me that everything's okay. It's not okay. The people telling me it's crisis point.
Okay, so what happened here on Green Island last week?
Last week, Indigenous hunters from a local community were sighted just off where we sit here now, and they were observed catching 6 sea turtles. These are sea turtles that tourists come here and snorkel amongst, who are used to people approaching them, have no fear of humans, don't scurry away, and the next thing they copped, those 6 turtles, was a whop in the back. Went right through their shell and they were dragged into the boat.
Did they kill them on the beach?
No, they took them away in the boat. Now, you have to wonder yourself why 6 turtles are killed in one hit by a couple of hunters. How can anybody...
Sorry, I'll just stop you there. That last one, no one's going to know what a whop in the back means, so
Right.
just say spear or...
Oh. Yeah.
Okay.
How do you know this happened?
Well, like I said, over this 2.5-year journey that I've had with this campaign, I've gathered many supporters.
Yeah.
And many of those people carry high-definition cameras with them, and the vision that you will see about the earlier hunt, the same person was fortunate enough to witness that incident, so they related to me on the telephone last week. So I'm confident that that was an accurate account of many reports on this island from other sources I've had here that also tell me that the normal catch is 2 to 3 to 4 turtles, but this was a rare occasion. He saw 6 dragged into the boat.
Okay. Now, your critics would say you're overstating the problem. Do you know what happens to the meat of the turtle and dugong once they're slaughtered?
Well, the stuff in the Torres Straits comes down through Cairns Airport. It comes in any day. Anyone that wants to go to Cairns Airport can have a look at the 5:15, the end carousel, and you'll see esky after esky. I actually queried the head of AQUIS out at the Cairns Airport, the Australian Quarantine Inspection Service, and I quizzed him on what was in those cartons, because it just appears to be an esky. It could be full of fish, it could be full of anything. He told me that it was full of turtle and dugong meat and turtle eggs. Hundreds of turtle eggs are being brought down here and shared amongst the community. People who live in the island shouldn't be eating an endangered or vulnerable animal. That the whole spirit and the intent of the Native Title Act was to be killed and consumed in country, not to be killed and consumed in Cairns and south in Rockhampton, Brisbane. This isn't what the Native Title Act spirit and intent was about. And it comes down here on a daily basis. I have a person who is a source at the airport who has witnessed 60 kilos a day minimum, 7 days a week for the last 7 years. Now, that sort of meat and that sort of trade, I had a local politician who named 2 hunters in federal parliament last year, and they'd killed 4 dugong in one night and 8 dugong the next night. All that meat was being transported either into Cairns or into southern parts of New Guinea for sale. Now, there's a lucrative trade going on. They upset a lot of people. I don't care. These animals are more important than my well-being. I think that the trade that is rampant in Australia by Indigenous and non-Indigenous, I also want to point that out. Many non-Indigenous, white ferals they call them up on the Cape there, kill the turtle and dugong and sell the meat for social purposes, I'll call it. I really don't want to go into what they do it for, but I've got many instances of people witnessing that too.
Now, who's collecting these eskies at the airport?
They're picked up sometimes. They had a recent celebration here, or a 3-day conference of Indigenous rangers and all mayors and people from up on the Cape, and they met here in Cairns for 3 days. That particular day we filmed eskies coming off the carousel, picked up by rangers themselves. Indigenous rangers in possession of eskies, and I'd be stunned to hear they were full of fresh fish, because we know quite well. I've had a local mayor, like you said, talking about how I've been attacked. I had a local mayor even state on television that it probably me going over there and killing them myself. I want to state that I have no part in that. I also don't have a wish to commit suicide, so if anything happens to me after this interview, I'd like you to know, on public record, I have no intention of committing suicide.
Now, where is that meat sold?
It's sold all around Cairns. It's sold from a local community. Other communities close to Cairns, and I mean within an hour and a half, travel to a community not far from Cairns and they purchase that meat there. It's been offered for sale at local communities not far out of Port Douglas. It's offered for sale in Cairns. I've been well informed. I was personally standing with my good friend Bob Irwin one day. An Indigenous lady told me that the Indigenous diplomats in Cairns purchase it on a regular basis too. So it's a rampant trade, one everybody's too frightened to talk about. I'm not frightened to talk about it because it's wrong, and it happens here in Australia, and I'm embarrassed to be an Australian when I hear that.
And Indigenous sea rangers are a part of it.
They're definitely part of it, and they know they're a part of it. I was shocked to see some vision of an Indigenous ranger a few weeks ago who I didn't recognise to be Indigenous, to tell you the truth. And I know someone that actually saw him place 3 turtles on their back in a community not far from Cairns. That person during the day works for the Ranger Service, and he relocates crocodiles, and yet he also supplies turtles. And when we get into tin tax, what they're doing is totally legal in relation to catching those animals, because the Native Title Act allows them to do that. But the part that it doesn't allow them to do is to sell that animal, because part of the Act clearly states for non-commercial use. Now, when you're transporting animal flesh of an endangered or vulnerable animal around Australia, you are committing a federal offence. People have got to be asking why the federal police aren't acting on this, and also want to know why, when that meat is inspected in the Torres Straits, it's inspected as seafood, when a dugong is clearly a mammal. It should be inspected as meat.
Now, do you recognise the men collecting the eskies in the footage?
I recognise them from their appearances on television, and I recognise them from the footage that my friend gathered at the airport.
And who are they?
By name, I know one was Ranger James. I don't know the esky that he actually picked up contained turtle and dugong meat, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did.